In the Chaoshan region, there's an old belief among the elderly to tell if someone is possessed by a ghost. See if they walk on their tiptoes without moving their heels. Uncle Lee glanced up, his heart skipping a beat. He saw the girl with long shoulder-length hair, walking on her tiptoes. Her face was pale and dull, her eyes hollow and staring straight ahead. She wasn't looking at her feet. Uncle Lee was stunned by the sight. The teacher walking behind him noticed that he had stopped and asked, "Hey officer, what's wrong?" Uncle Lee hadn't yet looked away from the girl's face. Hearing the teacher's question, he glanced back at the long-haired girl. Her head didn't turn, but her eyes slowly shifted towards him. Her gaze was lifeless. She stared at Uncle Lee, and then the corners of her mouth twitched upwards ever so slightly. Her cheek muscles didn't move, and her lips were pursed, as if someone had lifted one corner of her mouth with two fingers, giving her a forced, insincere smile. Uncle Lee, being a police officer, was well aware of the ancient beliefs passed down through generations in the Chaoshan region. He immediately felt that something was off. However, driven by a self-preservation instinct, he subconsciously knew he couldn't keep looking at the girl or voice his suspicions. He felt that if he did, something terrible would happen. He quickly glanced away and lied to the teacher, saying, "It's nothing. I thought I left something in the classroom, but it turns out I put it in the wrong pocket." False alarm. False alarm. He casually made up this excuse and turned to leave, feeling beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Fortunately, his mental fortitude was strong, and he managed to keep his composure, walking out of the building with his flashlight on. As soon as he stepped outside, his radio crackled to life. "What's going on?" It was another call from the station, instructing Uncle Lee to return immediately, while Officer Chen would drive the girls home with the teacher. Uncle Lee's heart sank, but he had no choice but to follow orders. He nodded to Officer Chen, who seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. Uncle Lee gave him a few meaningful glances and said, "Chen, be careful on the way." Officer Chen, catching his drift, replied, "Okay, I'll be cautious. You be careful too." With that, Officer Chen, the three girls, and the teacher got into the police car, said their goodbyes to Uncle Lee and the gatekeeper, and drove off. Uncle Lee was about to leave when the gatekeeper suddenly grabbed his arm. "Officer, wait, don't go yet. Today's events are just too strange. There are several things that don't add up, and I want to talk to you about them." Uncle Lee gestured for the gatekeeper to calm down. The gatekeeper, a mix of nervousness and confusion, explained to Uncle Lee, "I've already told the class teacher. We searched every classroom in every building. This school takes safety and the theft prevention very seriously. All the windows of the teaching buildings are equipped with iron wire meshes. These meshes are very sturdy. Even if you tried to smash them with desks and chairs, you wouldn't succeed. Normally, after the students leaving school, I personally check each classroom to make sure no one is inside and then lock the doors myself. I do this every day. Early the next morning, before the students arriving, I open all the classroom doors one by one. I had already locked all the classroom doors. There was nowhere for anyone to hide inside the classrooms. If there was any place at all, it would be under the podium, but that could only fit 2 people at most." The gatekeeper continued, "I checked and there was no one when I locked the doors. That particular classroom was clearly locked, and there was no one inside when the class teacher and I checked all the classrooms. The lights were off and the door was locked. There was no way anyone could have gotten in. We searched the entire campus and didn't find anyone. Even if these 3 students managed to avoid us and wander around the school, how did they get into a locked classroom? There are only 2 sets of keys for the classrooms, one set with me, the gatekeeper, and the other with the head teacher of the corresponding grade. They wouldn't have had the keys. And when we saw it, the classroom was locked from the outside with a big padlock. How could they have gotten in and locked themselves inside?" After the gatekeeper finished speaking, Uncle Lee remained silent. He had already noticed a strange thing about the classroom when he first saw it, and he believed that Officer Chen must have noticed it too. Officer Chen had glanced at him in the classroom, and that look probably meant to tell him that this was very odd. The gatekeeper went on, "When I entered the room, I was terrified. These 3 girls were actually playing with a spirit board Ouija board. It's incredible how these girls are They came to the school to play with the spirit board. On this particular day, the 6th day of the 6th lunar month. What on earth were they thinking? Moreover, I saw that the dish used for the spirit board had blood on it. They were really risking their lives. Playing with a spirit board like this could genuinely summon something sinister. It's not as simple as just asking it a few questions and getting answers. There could be consequences, and you wouldn't know what you've summoned. Using a drop of one's own blood to play with the spirit board is called blood Ouija. The entities summoned this way could be the most malevolent. Uncle Lee was also aware of this belief. Locals in the Chaoshan area are no strangers to Ouija boards, and there is an unwritten rule hidden behind the customs. Asking for help from spirits is not that simple. It's not one-sided. After you ask for their help, you have to fulfill their wishes too. Avoid unnecessary trouble in the future. The gatekeeper said, since the school bought the land from the funeral home in 2007 and built this new teaching building, many strange things have happened. I usually sleep in the duty room at night, but sometimes when I'm sleeping there, I see lights in the left teaching building, even though the lights are supposed to be off. When I go to check with the flashlight, I hear strange noises like the creaking of an opening door. But when I look around, all the classrooms are locked properly, and I don't find any open doors. So later on when this happens, I simply don't go to that building anymore. Anyway, when I check in the morning, everything is normal. Do you think these incidents have anything to do with what happened today? The gatekeeper was really scared and talked to Uncle Lee for quite a while. But after listening to him, Uncle Lee didn't find anything particularly new. He comforted the gatekeeper not to overthink it, and said that as long as the students were safe, that was what mattered. You've worked hard too. Get some rest. I need to head back to the station. I have other matters to attend to, he said, bidding farewell to the gatekeeper. Back at the station, while handling other work, he specifically contacted Officer Chen, feeling a bit uneasy and asking about the situation. Officer Chen said that he had safely sent the students home and would be back at the station soon. Later, when Officer Chen returned, the two of them immediately compared notes on what had happened. Uncle Lee and Officer Chen discussed the strange occurrences in detail, including how the three girls were locked inside the classroom with a padlock on the outside. They talked about the blood-dripping Ouija board ritual and the eerie behavior of the girl with long shoulder-length hair, who had been walking on her tiptoes with a vacant expression. They also noted other peculiar details. For instance, it was Uncle Lee who first spotted the light through the classroom window. Officer Chen, with his extensive experience, initially thought it was candlelight. However, upon entering the classroom, he saw that the light was actually from a flashlight mounted on an iron stand, shining down on a small dish. No matter how you moved it, a flashlight couldn't replicate the flickering effect of candlelight. This discrepancy puzzled him. Moreover, it wasn't just the girl with long hair who seemed off. When they were returning the girl with the single ponytail home, her family was waiting at the entrance of their residential complex. The parents, having been informed by the teacher, were profusely apologizing and thanking the officers and the teacher.